Good morning, everyone. Um, Welcome to my channel. This is Houston. Um, you do have to excuse me. Um, I had to work one of my other shifts, one of my other jobs this morning. I just got into work this job. I don't have to open up here for another 2 hours, so I thought I'd get some videos done and get them uploaded. I had a couple really cool not video responses, but comments to my question asking for topics. Because I kind of was flunked. Um, that's what I wanted to do. I have my coffee. It's getting cold, so you may see me switch over to my soda, and I apologize beforehand, but I will be. It's my alarm clock to normally get up for today, but I will be eating Pop Tart for breakfast throughout the video, so I hope you don't mind. But with that being said, okay, we're done with the coffee. On to the soda. Sorry, super thirsty. All right, that's better. So the first topic that was presented was I don't actually think I've done a video on how I found my path and what's led me to the path I'm on now. So that's what we're going to talk about, my path. How I found it, how I started, and what I've studied to lead me to where I am in my practice now. So I started, I was in high school. I started studying, I think, around the age of 16. 16 or 17, I think, in the midpoint. I've been always fascinated in shows with wizards like Harry Potter, or shows with mythical creatures, magic, anything like that when growing up. And I was always, I would write short stories, and I used to do really good. But my short stories, I made the characters to be around my friends. So my friends in high school and middle school would be the characters, and I would be part of it too, and be part of like almost like a Final Fantasy kind of thing, or a into the world sci-fi kind of thing. And I would always be the wizard, witch, or mage, or however you put it, in the stories. So I've always been drawn to that, the mystical and the magical aspects of life. But it really hit me. It really hit me when well, we'll do that in a second. I'll tell you about that in a second. So never mind. In high school, there was this book, and it sounds really stupid, but this book called Wizardology. I think I've talked about it before on one of my other videos, but it was like a teen book, Wizardology, like How to Train Your Dragon, or the Piratology, Egyptology, those little books with like little get things inside. But I would always have my sophomore year. I carried that around with me everywhere religiously, um, and it had a deck of cards inside. And I would use the deck of cards, and I would read people's fortunes. And some of the times they got it pretty accurate. Some of the times they didn't. But that's to be expected. They weren't really a tarot deck. A friend of mine, um, actually, before I came out of the closet, a girlfriend of mine, she told me that if you like that so much, if I like the book so much, why don't I look up Wicca? So after I got home, when I got home from school that day, I went on the internet, back home, slow internet, dial up. I remember that. And I looked up Wicca, and reading about what the principles of Wicca were, and that it was a nature-based religion, that it went around with the seasons and the wheel of the year, and incorporated magic into its practices. I felt like I was coming home. It felt really good. It felt like I was here. My parents were against it because we were, I mean, they're open-minded now, but in the beginning they were against it. They thought I was getting into like devil worship and stuff like that, just like any parent does when their child, unless, Christian child turns to Wicca, they think you're going to devil worship. But that wasn't the case. My dad, I was looking up on both sides, and my dad came over my shoulder and said, "It doesn't matter if it's white or it's black. You told me you're still going to hell." And I was like, I don't believe that. I don't believe in hell. I really don't believe in the stuff we've been going to church and listening. Because at church, I would see so many people who at church were holy rollers and had their nose stuck up in there, even for a small church. Had their nose stuck up in the air and was preaching the word, but throughout the week they were doing things that the opposite of what they were doing Sunday, I guess you could say. They didn't, I don't want to say faithful because that's not really the term. I mean, they weren't walking what they preach, or doing what they walking what they talk. To some extent, they just talk the talk. So they were big and bad in church, and then on the weekdays they would do all this stuff, and then come in and ask for forgiveness and all that shit. And we even had rivals and stuff in the church, and it was just one major stress after another, and it's a lot of things that I'm not blaming anyone for anything, because it's just the church was dysfunctional to begin with. It's now getting close to its second 200 years being old, being open. Very old, very backwoods Lutheran church. But beside the point. So I started researching, and when my parents weren't at home, I'd research more, and when they got home, I'd just hide it and not have anything that they would know. Um, so when I turned 17, it was my junior year in high school, on Labor Day weekend. Well, actually, it was happening when I was 16 too. I was diagnosed with Crohn's, and I had it for a year before they finally was able to diagnose it. I was misdiagnosed and thought it was food poisoning, so they gave me antibiotics the first time, and it went away for a while, but it came back severely. And for those of you who do not know what Crohn's disease is, it is a gastro and intestinal disease. It can be inflamed, or it can be in remission, and I've been in remission for about 3 years, thankfully. I still have not really flare-ups, but I still have symptoms every now and then. My Crohn's can go from anywhere from, I've heard, to the back of your eyes, all the way down to your butthole to an extent. It can be anywhere. It's basically inflammation. It's where your body thinks that your body basically attacks itself. And that's what the inflammation is called. Your immune system goes into overdrive, and the white blood cells start attacking a part of your healthy organs, or healthy whatever, and it causes it to flare up, which kind of wasn't really the case for me. I had ulcers that were closing off my lower and larger intestines where they met, so it was hard for me to actually digest food because it couldn't make it through. So every time I ate something, it was like someone shot me. Someone had a gunshot and they shot me in the stomach, right about here. So, and that doesn't happen. I haven't had a flare up, like I said, in 3 years. It's a stress related illness, so it does flare up with stress. I've been trying to keep my stress down. When I was in the hospital, I was in the hospital for a week. What happened was I wasn't feeling good at school, or over the weekend. I wasn't feeling good. And so my mom said, Monday, we're going to take you to my office. She works at a doctor's office. She has for almost 32 years. She worked the same office. So I went to her office. I really wasn't feeling well. I was pale. It was hard for me to walk. I was just in a lot of pain. And they took my blood. It was the first time giving blood, so I passed out, and I had all my mom's nurses and her holding back against the wall and carrying me to a table, which I felt really like, I couldn't do anything. So and when we found out My mom, it took 30 minutes to get the results back, 30 minutes to an hour. I don't know how I fell asleep. And my mom told me to wake up, that we're going to get you in a wheelchair and we're going to take you down to the front lobby. You're going to get in my car and we're going to go to the hospital. And I was like, what's going on? She's like, your white blood cell count is over 2,000. And I was like, is that bad? And she's like, yeah, that's bad. That means you have some kind of infection, something's going on in your system that we need to know about. So, um, um, before this, I did all these endoscopies and all that jazz, and they couldn't find anything. They thought I was just making it up. But my mom rushed me to the hospital. As soon as I walked in, the nurses got me into a wheelchair because I couldn't walk. They got me checked in. I was put into a room. Um, I'm gonna share it anyway. I think it's not that nasty, but other people might think it is. But I had to drink this stuff to clean me out, and they did a colonoscopy on me and found that I had a form of Crohn's disease in my lower and large intestines. So that's when I was diagnosed. I was in the hospital, and they monitored me for about a week. I was a week out of school on Labor Day week. That marks this last Labor Day week marked 7 years that I've been diagnosed with Crohn's. Um, but in the hospital, I made up my mind that I was tired of the stress. I was tired of being in fear of God, even though I knew that God was nothing to be feared of. We are part of God. He made us, so why should we be fearful of Him? That kind of thing. So I made up my mind in the hospital that I wanted to continue my studies. I didn't tell anyone. This was more of like a internal thing. That I want to continue my studies in Wicca and paganism. At the time, I just knew Wicca. I didn't know paganism. I didn't know what it was. Um, so after I got out of the hospital, everything was fine. They put me on antibiotics and all that jazz. But back to my path part. We were in Barnes and Noble one day, and there was this book. It was in the wrong place, but not Barnes and Noble, Books a Million in Lexington. This book. It was called Celtic Myth and Magic, and it was in the fiction section. No, it was in the historical section. I was just looking around for books. Mom's like, you can pick one book out, and then I'll buy it, and you'll be good. Something for you to read, because I was an avid reader before then. I love teen fiction, so she's like, just pick one book out, and I'll get it for you. Um, so I picked this book up, and I started going through it, and I noticed that it was a pagan book, a Wicca book, by Eden McCoy. Um, and my mom bought it for me. She didn't know what it was. She thought it was a history book. And so there's where I started my path. I started my path reading Eden McCoy's Celtic Myth and Magic, and it's evolved from Wicca to Celtic Wicca to I studied the Greek pantheon, the Egyptian pantheon at one point in time, which some of the gods called to me, some of them didn't. That's like with all three that I've done. Some of the gods called to me, some of them didn't. I've studied shamanism. I love the idea of shamanism, different cultures and different practices, and the three world cosmology. I have studied different forms of folk magic, powwow, hoodoo. Powwow was a Pennsylvania Dutch form, it's kind of like hoodoo, where hoodoo is more uh, southeastern, I could say. Louisiana, South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, things like that. Powwow, more Pennsylvania Dutch. Um, Same concepts to an extent, but there are some different and technicalities. I have not studied anything about voodoo. That at the moment has not interested me yet. I say yet because I could be studying anything. Um, Basic ritual formation, working with a group. I have been in a couple of groups since I've moved here to Charleston. I moved here to Charleston in 2009 for college. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to finish college. I was going to college for photography. I wasn't able to finish, unfortunately, but that's beside the point. I've been in a couple groups. I've been in a learning circle, two learning circles, and I've been to a couple of local covens rituals. And I am no longer part of any group. Um, I'm a solitary practitioner. Um, I just felt that now it's time for me to focus on me instead of focus on the group dynamics. I know how a group and how they work ritual and how the energy can feel, and sometimes I do miss it, but at the same time, I need to work on myself. So, but also things I've studied as well, divination. I'm a huge tarot, oracle, scrying, psychic abilities are big things that call to me and draw me into the path. Um, Healing. I've been studying also healing just to heal the self, since I have gone through Crohn's disease and try to get myself off medication. I've been off medication for about 2 years. Been in remission for 3. The doctor wanted to continue to be put on medication, and it was affecting my body negatively, so I stopped seeing that doctor. So I've been researching and using. I know this is not good for me either, but Mountain Dew. Just saying. I've been researching and practicing different forms of different energy healing techniques. I am, as of October 13th of this year, a Reiki master. I am still learning about the tarot. I do read, I don't want to say professionally. Well, I guess I can say professionally because I read for fairs and I do readings here at the shop. And I do charge money for them. So I guess you could say that's professional. I'm not a master at any extent of the tarot. There's still a lot for me to learn. Um, and I'm working on the playing cards. Those have interested me too. Oracle are always fun. The runes haven't called to me. They have now, but not for divination purposes, just for magic and incorporating them into my magic. Um, Over the years, I have worked with many different deities, and I've kind of gone back to my roots. I started working when I first started with my sister, who was a guide. She's not my blood sister, she's my witch pagan sister. Um, Her god and goddess, matron or patron, was Gaia and the Green Man, and we called them Nana and Ada, which is Elvish for mother and father. Um, I still work with, or I still feel Nana and Ada's presence um, around me all the time. I do think they're calling me back to work with them and to build a relationship back with them. And I'm looking forward to it because it seemed like with them there was more magic and not a less of my brain being overridden. Because when you learn so much, I'm a book nerd. I have like 4 to 5 books open at one time and reading at one time. If I get bored with one, I go to the next one. If I get bored with that, I go back to the other one. And it can get kind of complicated and kind of confusing, so I have to reread multiple times. But that's just kind of how I work. I know this is kind of like a rambly video, but it's kind of also telling you where my path is and how I've got to where I am. Over the years, talking about deities, I have worked with Athena for a short while. She came in. She came into my life when I needed a feminine strength and protection. Her and Horus came into my life at the same time, and Horus helped me a lot with seeing through facades, illusions, and also that aspect of the all-seeing eye and protection. And Athena was the same way with her shield and the wisdom that she imparted. Um, I have also worked with Poseidon, the god of the sea. I still work with him. I actually have his symbol tattooed on my arm. I want to get his other brothers' symbols as well. I do like the aspect of the 3 brothers in Greek mythology. I want Zeus' symbol here on the back of my neck and Hades' symbol on my other arm, just so I could kind of show of kind of like it's the upper, lower, and middle worlds. So this is the middle. This one will be the upper, and this one will be the lower. So in the shamanic culture, they're the gods of the 3 worlds. Um, Poseidon, ruling over the sea, also can rule over the land as well. He does walk the earth. as well as swim in the sea. Zeus is heaven or cloud bound, not cloud bound. I mean, they all of them come up to an extent to the earth, but his kingdom is in the upper realm, where Hades is in the underworld, or in a place named after him, Hades. Um, and it's not the brimstone and fire that everyone thinks about. It's something totally different. But I wanted to incorporate all three brothers onto my body because I do have major respect for them. I also worked with a triple goddess um, in multiple ways. Like I worked with Hecate for a while in her triple form. I worked with her, Demeter, and Persephone in their triple form. I think it was Artemis, Demeter, and Persephone. I worked with them as well, and in their triple goddess aspects. With the waning of the moon, I worked with them. I've come to recently work with Cernunnos or Hern. I think they're two different, but I think Cernunnos is the one that I'm more focused. Cernunnos, the Lord of the Wild, and Caradwyn, the Celtic goddess of witches, goddess of druidry, the keeper of knowledge, the keeper of the cauldron of knowledge, Awen. I also work with angels, Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel, the four elemental archangels. There are others that I work with as well, but those are the mains. Recently, I'm starting a connection with Ganesh and Buddha for meditation, happiness, and abundance. I have worked with Fortuna and Abundancia, if that's how you say her name, I'm not sure. I've worked with a lot. They come in and out. I don't, as a matron and patron, I would say Nana and Ada, the guy and the green man, are my matron and patron. But deities, I feel like I have to sneeze. Deities come in and out of my life, almost like when they're needed, or when they have something to offer. That's kind of like spirit animals for me. And I'll do another topic on spirit animals and what my beliefs are if I haven't done one already. I think I've done one. I don't know. But if I haven't, then I will. I'll go through my videos, and if I haven't, I will make one later on. One second. Okay, yeah. All right. Now here, like I said, I don't open for another hour or another 2 hours, and I thought I heard the door open. But I've studied also. At the moment, I've talked about in other videos, I'm studying Ascension for one of the classes. I want to finish Mystic Oaks, which is one of the learning circles. I had to take a break, and I'm finishing up those classes so I can get a certificate of completion to an extent, and be a high priest in what they call, and kind of like be raised or risen, a rite of ritual of rising, or whatever you call it, to be a high priest in their kind of circle. So I already consider myself a high priest in my practice, but to have, I guess, but to study under someone else's and be a high priest considered them, it's kind of an honor. So at the moment, I'm studying Ascension Magic by Christopher Penczak. It's not the only book that, that's my boyfriend. He can wait a second. It's not the only book that or only thing that I'm reading. I'm reading a lot of other things as well. But that's the most current. So I think that covers everything until now. My practice in and of itself is a mixture of shamanistic techniques, folk magic, simplistic magic, candle magic, energy work. I do a lot of my spells instantaneously, meaning that I sit, meditate, and focus on something. I bring it into like a chi ball or a ball, and then I let it up into the atmosphere. That's how I say instantaneously. I mean, I don't sit down and do ritual itself. A lot of the stuff for me is done in my mind or in the astral. Um, just because everything, my mind's altar isn't as cluttered as my physical altar. My physical altar is kind of a mess, but I like it that way. But at the same time, I also like to do some major works in my head where it's not that cluttered. Um, and I do a lot of divination. So those are my main practices of what I practice in my craft. So I hope you guys enjoyed me explaining how I got to my path and a little bit about my craft and who I've worked with. And I think I'm going to make one more video before I have enough time to make 2 more videos before I clock into work. So I'll see you guys in a little bit. Many blessings.